Well, hello family and welcome to Property Focus. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at climate change and ensuring that your buildings are more climate resilient. In this episode, we've got an architect and an urban planner to just demystify this a bit more and tell us what you and I need to do to be safer in this trying time when we hear El Nino is going to be coming. My name is Peter Ngigi, folks, and welcome to Property Focus. Joined with me, we've got an architect who's been in the industry for quite some time. Without further ado, let's briefly introduce yourself.
Hi, Peter.
How are you doing?
Always a pleasure to be on the show.
Glad to have you.
Always fun talking to you and having these conversations about Mjengo.
Yes.
My name is Emma Miloyo, for those who may not know me.
Yes.
I'm an architect.
Yes.
You know, my claim to fame is that I was the first female president of the Architectural Association of Kenya. And always glad to be part of the show, not my first time. And hopefully this will last forever, you know?
Brilliant,
Me
absolutely.
Coming back again and again.
And again and again.
Yes, yes.
Now, we're talking about climate resilience and sustainable designs.
Yes.
How does climate change affect the overall total value of a project?
So two things, you know, coming off Africa Climate Week, everybody's talking about it. And for a long time in Africa, people have been looking at it from the food security point of view, the agricultural point of view.
Yes.
But buildings and urban environments contribute a lot to the whole conversation. For example, cement and concrete, you know, contribute to the total carbon emissions about 40%. So buildings are a big deal. And it's about time we took that seriously. Because what we're doing as architects has a big impact on the in the environment. So, in terms of that contribution, in terms of being, you know, getting a bit more serious about what we do, is certainly very important in this day and age.
Speaking of which, strategies. What strategies are architects using to sort of mitigate climate change? Yes.
The strategies we can employ, you know, is looking at around energy usage, because AC, lighting are a big, AC is a big deal, and heating, well, not so much in our context, maybe unless you're from Limuru, but lighting as well was another strategy. Then the materials that you use. Those are the three fundamentals of, and then water.
Yes.
So those are the four pillars of, you know, green strategies as you're building. So recycling your water, having, you know, your flushing mechanisms that use minimal water, having as much natural lighting as you can, and not depending on artificial lighting. Around energy conservation is not heating too much, natural ways of ventilating, using fans instead of AC, and the other one I've said is materials. So very important. What's the carbon load of your material, embodied carbon as we call it, in the material that you have. So if you're using you know, stone, to get that stone to your site and to your building, how much carbon was used in its production. So being very careful about the materials you choose, and those materials also influence energy as well, in terms of insulation, how much they're letting in and letting out. So materials also very important. So those are the four strategies that architects employ.
Interesting. Speaking of materials, what materials should we use then?
Yes. So many times even materials will have, nowadays they'll tell you how much. The more manufactured, just like food, when you're told the more processed, the less healthy it is for you. So the more manufacturing and heating and whatever that a material has gone through, the less good it is for the environment. Same principle. So, you know, stone is still a very good one. Surprisingly, the other day, I learned that brick isn't that good. It's a natural material, but the process it goes through in terms of heating and burning fuel makes it, the embodied carbon in it is a lot. So it's just checking those fundamentals, and there are wonderful rating tools out there. There's LEED. In our book, Building in Kenya, we've, you know, shared a few, first of all the strategies I've talked about are in there, but also certifications that you can get as an architect or as a developer for your building to ensure that it's green. And some of those certifications will tell you already in terms of rating of materials. So you don't have to cram everything. But as you're choosing a material, you can do a little bit of research around it and see what's the meaning of this, what's the impact of this on the environment, and to get this you know, building and this material, what did it take? Interesting. Wonderful. Can we reference a building that has something similar that many architects should incorporate? Yes. So like I had said, even a lot of our buildings, without going for the certifications that I've talked about that we've elaborated, whether it's EDGE, which is a tool by AFC, very good for emerging economies like ours, there's LEED, there's Green Star from South Africa, so there are tools like that that measure. But a lot of our buildings are already very green. I'm giving a very politically correct answer, but locally, even the UNEP headquarters, the new one, is a stellar example. Of course, they're the home of environment as far as much as environment go globally, so they had to do that by example, and there are many other great initiatives. Warehouses up, African Logistics have done some good warehousing that they've got EDGE certification for, and more a lot of architects and developers are becoming aware of the importance and what it means for not only sustainability but even appeal, because everybody is a bit more savvy now. So you find even corporates will want to be in a building that is certified. So it's an extra selling point for developers. Interesting, for example, a tool like EDGE, it gives you what you're saving in maintenance already. When you feed in the certain things and you certify your building, it tells you this is how much you've saved in the maintenance of your entire building. So it's cost saving in the long run, but also gives you an edge in terms of your building. It's a marketing. It's good for marketing. It's good for people are more savvy and aware now. Of all these issues. We can't avoid it anymore.
Absolutely amazing. As always, it's a pleasure to have you. Brilliant.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Peter.
much. Super. Now that was Emma. We're going to take a short commercial break and then get to hear from an urban planner in just a moment. Stay tuned. How are you?
Hi.
Good. Yes. Welcome back. Welcome back to
Peter.
Property Focus.
Thank you very much.
And welcome viewers from the commercial break. We're joined here with an urban planner and a good friend of the show. Briefly introduce yourself.
Sure.
Yes.
My name is Robin Emerson, and I am the co-author of Building in Kenya. And I'm also an urban planner, and I also work in housing advocacy.
Okay.
Yes.
Super. We're talking about climate change at the moment.
Yes.
Are there any recommended strategies that can enhance climate resilience?
Most definitely. Coming from an urban planning perspective, I like to think that urban planners are actually quite central to the mitigations and the adaptations of climate change, because the urban planners are the ones who get, aside from God, who get to say where things will happen, where things will be placed. You shall be there, and we didn't do it just in 7 days. We do it all the time.
Super.
So we get to say where are the best places for uses of land. And so where should our sports facilities be? Where should our health facilities be? Our living facilities? But we are also taking in regard to the quality and the conditions of the land that we're talking about using. And so urban planners have a key role in helping us mitigate and as well as adapt to climate change.
Okay, speaking of mitigation, how do you mitigate these effects?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think we are, if we take Nairobi for an example, we're still a very growing urbanized city. And so we do have a chance to actually build and develop appropriately for the future that we are expecting here in Nairobi. So that mitigation looks like zoning restrictions and zoning guidelines that actually do take in, like I said, those land use principles that will help us mitigate the challenges. In addition to that, building codes that will start to say what the buildings should look like and how they should be used, and the technology that's used that's appropriate for this environment, that's appropriate for what's around us in terms of materials, sourcing materials for a sustainable use. But it also talks about our planning processes. Nairobi doesn't have we have a master plan, but it's not necessarily adhered to. And then various wards across the county, and I would actually speculate across the country, don't have what we call local physical development plans that actually ring fence, inside of these areas, how the land is going to be used. And so as we continue to develop and we plan in such a sporadic nature, there's no predictability in terms of how we're going to make certain that this area is carved off for this use, this area is carved off for this use, for its highest and greatest purpose. And so that's what we really need to have leaders that are saying, saying, because we just came out of this climate conference, we need leaders that are familiar with these, that are champions, not just familiar, that are champions of these principles and these policies being adhered to.
Okay. Now, engaging an urban planner might be seen as something that could be costly. How does it build in?
Yeah.
Is it costly? Because maybe some developers are shying away from that.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think I've heard this sentiment before, Peter. But one of the things we do say in the book, and I think this is really like the underlining principle of Emma and I's thinking about this book, is we do think that the investment on the front end is way more valuable in regards to the long-term project ahead than all of the what you call it, fixing things, putting band-aids on things as you go along and you find these challenges. And so that front end of urban planning, why it's critical is because you involve the stakeholders around, you might involve the community around as a developer or as the government. Many people also think that the urban planning process may hinder losing an opportunity. Maybe I'm going to lose an investment opportunity if I don't strike now, if I don't strike while what we call the iron being hot. But they just don't know you might get burnt anyhow some other down the way. And so it's critical that government says, no, these are our policies. We have actually already marked where you need to develop. Please do not go outside of that because you see somebody else doing it. We need you to stay inside of this for a reason, because we have a vision that matches the values that we have for Nairobi, and we can't afford you to go outside of that.
True. Now, we already have buildings that are already up. How can we mitigate against the effects of climate change?
Well, I think that one of the things and because there's a lot of awareness being raised to this inside of the built environment, as well as consumers. Consumers are also very aware of what they need to do. So how are we rain harvesting? How are we, so these are consumers, if you will, they have a stake inside of this. Can they be rain harvesting? And so they're collecting water. Can we be conserving electricity? But also inside of developers, we're thinking about position and orientation of their property. We're also seeing many places, developments that are coming up. I don't know why in Kilimani it's very popular to see 3 towers coming up on a less than an acre. But the impact on that is that the people living there are without sunlight. So that has actually mental challenges that come up with communities, if you will, because they don't get adequate and appropriate amount of sunlight. We're seeing that they're not getting the use of utilities. So we're saying these are the ways that we're talking about how do we measure profit? How do we measure benefit? And so we've got to, weigh the cost that my own personal profit as a developer to also the contribution, the profit of the people in the community affected and the quality of their lives. And so that mitigation is in various ways that they need to be thinking about.
Interesting. Now, what about the community? How do we send that information to the, so to say, vulnerable areas?
Well, interestingly enough, Peter, in the vulnerable areas, they're more coherent and connected when they think about what's happening in their community. I think it's when we move into more middle and upper class communities that we start to see more separation and the cohesiveness start to dissipate. And so in these local communities or rural communities, we could tear a page of inspiration from them, because they are noticing what's happening around them. They're very close to the ground in various ways, and they can see the changes of the environment and so forth. And so what we need to do is actually just continue to work with them, and how can they actually give back to the government and feed back into the government. This is what we want. This is the quality of life that we've had here for so long. It has worked for so long. Please don't interrupt development, if you will, to these new, what I like to say, bad behaviors. So please don't bring the bad behaviors that we're seeing in some of the higher and denser communities and then come and ruin our communities that have really worked. So we have some learning that we can take from both communities, but we really need to model what they're doing and how they are staying in tune to what keeps sustainability, what mitigates climate change. And unfortunately, we're all integrated together, because what happens upstream comes to us downstream. What happens across the county comes across us to the other county. So I think we really need to break the silos, and we really need to be sharing and learning experiences from each other.
In terms of government support, are there policies that are actually in place?
Well, we are starting to see that more are coming on board, but the problem, I think, is the mitigation.
Okay.
So even if we see the Nairobi River regeneration, we know that they're doing a lot of work for us to think about how the river all along through the county, how at each point that it is, revitalizing and coming to a place where it is, not disturbing environmentally the environment of people around them. Yes. But we do see people releasing effluent in those rivers, and that's developers that are doing that. But in addition to that, we are seeing many other wastes that are coming in there, and so we need to think about what is it that is hindering people from appropriately discharging the various wastes that are there. And so it's several things. It's behavior change, and it's also making certain that we have facilities and infrastructure that's appropriate and ready to use, because if somebody feels like it's an inconvenience or it's a hindrance to actually follow these policies, they just won't do it. I've raised several children, and and I know that if I don't make it convenient, if I don't make it, but I also have to be consistent, and I have to be strict on what I'm saying is going to happen. And so I think we need to make certain that that's happening here in the county as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. So tying into some of the things that we're talking about here today, what does Building in Kenya book talk about that? You co-authored this with Emma. What does it say about this?
Well, what we've done, and this is our second edition, and we've updated it intentionally with new regulations, new policies since the last edition, but also trends. And one of the big trends, as we know, is the green building, sustainable development. And one of the things inside of here in this chapter, we talk about design, green building and design. But another thing that's quite interesting for developers, and this is such a, hopefully it's a carrot, is that there's green financing that is pumping into Kenya's market, so that it's encouraging our developers to do just that green building we're talking about. And we talk a lot about this. We talk about how do you get a green bankable project so that you can meet what the funders and investors are looking for.
To invest in your project.
Exactly. So this book is critical for several reasons. And we just hope that every developer has it in their toolkit. Everybody on their team and their project can sing chapter and verse of this book.
Let me see this page here. So we're talking about material efficiency. Page 94 is quite good. You should look into it. Sustainable design strategies, which are over here. Water conservation. Oh, nice. Improved health and well-being. All highlighted in this book. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming onto the show.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And there you have it. About Building in Kenya, autographed. You should get yourself this book. Now let's go find out from the community perspective what to do to mitigate on climate change.
My name is Beverly Musili. I'm the Executive Director of the Kilimani Project Foundation. I'm also an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. In Kilimani Project Foundation, we are a neighborhood association. We were formed about 10 years ago. We're actually celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. And we were formed out of the need to have a voice for our residents and also our members, and have a platform where our residents, our members, could engage in constructive and structured dialogue with duty bearers and government officers who provide various public services to our residents.
How does Kilimani Project Foundation plan on educating the general public on climate resilience?
First, we have an environment pillar where we advocate for turning Kilimani from grey to green. So trying to reverse the negative effects of the uncontrolled developments, the uncontrolled construction that we've seen in Kilimani. So having more green spaces, we do that through tree planting. To date, we've planted about 34,000 trees along Gong Road, and we're still aiming to do more. So we normally target 1,000 trees a year, and we're looking forward to this being a continuous movement, a continuous activity that we do, of course with the right support. And we educate different members of our community on environmental awareness. First, schools. We realize schools are very rich ground where we can try to bring about that influential change. So we work with different schools such as Kyoto School, where we work with the Mazingira Club, the Environment Club, and we work with these amazing children, try to educate them about environmental awareness. They also participate in coming up with their own interpretations of what they understand to be environmental conservation. Then we also have a very interesting waste management project that we do monthly, and we basically, number one, we promote zero waste economy. So we are trying to promote a circular economy within Kilimani, and we do this, number one, raising awareness of how do we segregate waste at source, what items can we recycle, where can we drop off our recyclable items. And from that we've seen this really pick up. People are more aware of what they can recycle. They're able to bring this down even to household level. So they teach people within their household and teach members within their household and also their residents how to recycle and how to segregate waste. So we've seen a lot of momentum in this, and it's something we do monthly at different locations, but mostly the Kilimani Primary School. And we work with different partners who are also in the recycling industry. And we encourage people to drop off their waste, such as plastics, glass bottles, textiles, sunglasses, and electronic waste. And this is something we're hoping we can scale up. Of course, that's always the dream, to scale up, to have it not just be at one point, but have it be practiced within our residents, within our estates, within our courts, and also within different buildings. We've also seen something similar like in Yaya Center, so we'd want to have those different points within Kilimani.
Very interesting. What's your parting shot as KPF? Would you like to demystify it a bit further? Some people don't understand what the objective of the foundation is.
Right, so the objective of the foundation is just to create better quality of life for our residents and also have this spread throughout Nairobi, so that we're more conscious about the effect of our activities on our community members. And one of the things we do a lot of advocacy around promoting controlled development and also ensuring that there's regulated urban development, because we have realized that there are a lot of negative impacts of this uncontrolled urban development on our environment. So we should not be seen to be against development or we're against properties coming up in Kilimani. There's a much bigger discussion that needs to be had, especially if you look at now the negative effects of climate change. With uncontrolled urban development comes loss of greenery, loss of green spaces, and also no efforts to replenish the greenery that has been lost. So as KPF, what we are advocating for basically is just a more orderly, more regulated, more conscious way of living and also of our development. So as a parting shot, I would say people should get to be more familiar with our work, also join our movement, see how you can support us, because all we're trying to do is create a better quality of life. Yeah.
How can they reach out? Instagram,
Yes.
Facebook?
Yeah, you can reach out on all those different platforms. We're on almost every social media platform. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on TikTok. Yes, so you can reach out through any of those different channels. And then, of course, the best way of engagement is attend one of our activities, attend one of our events. We have several of those that happen. Besides just the environmental ones, we have quite a number of activities that address the needs of our community. There are business activities that we have business forums, we have mental health activities, we have youth engagement activities. So attend one of our events, get to learn more about us, get to hear right from the source, and that way you can see how you can better engage with us.
Well, lovely. Thank you for coming onto the show.
Oh, thank you.
Brilliant. And there you have it. Now, that's on climate change and climate resilience. Next week, same place, same time. Goodbye.